Hello, welcome back to May for Makers. Today is day 15 and we'll be talking about my planning process. Unlike some of my maker friends, I've said this before, but I don't really have a particular planning process. For the very simple reason that I just like coming up with an idea, coming up with a project, and then trying to figure it out as I go in the workshop. I don't usually spend a lot of time to plan or design my work. That being said, there are some times when I find that planning something is a little bit handy, and I have to admit as well that usually those times end up resulting in at least in a smoother process. If I have to plan a project, usually I spend my time looking up information on the internet, of course, watching YouTube videos. There are a lot of great makers, as I've said before, who you can follow and get great ideas from, especially when it comes to the proper technique, or at least a better way of doing things, better than you're doing already. When I am working on some new leather carving, however, I do spend my time and obviously sketch the design. I usually do so on a piece of paper using a pencil so that I can erase any defects or pieces that I don't like. Once I do that, I scan the design and go on an Illustrator program. I convert my scan of the sketch into a PDF or any other kind of image which is digital, and therefore then I save it on my computer. That way it lets me to print it multiple times if I ever make a mistake and ruin the actual piece of paper on which I have my design. It also lets me edit some features. Sometimes if I need something symmetrical, I would only draw one half of the design and then mirror it in the computer. Just makes your life easier. If you're going for an asymmetrical design, of course you can do it all by hand. Now, ideally, when you are carving leather, if you want to trace something on your leather, you would use something like a tracing paper, for example. I do not have any of that in my shop. It's not very easily accessible where I live, so I usually just use the piece of paper. Sometimes I put a piece of baking sheet between the paper and the leather so that the water from the moisture and in the leather doesn't ruin my paper. But most of the time, given that I print the paper, I just go around it anyway. I use it anyway as it is without any baking paper. I don't care if it ruins the paper, I can print more. When I have to cut something out of leather, I try to maximize and plan my process, however, and that usually is in the form of cutting out the general shape of the cutout that I need to make out of leather and trying to find the best way to cut it from the larger piece of leather without any, or at least without any major waste. That is important because obtaining leather, first of all, leather is not a very cheap material to come by. And secondly, where I live, access to leather is very difficult. I always either have to order it online or get it from just one particular shop in Malta, and obviously they don't always have it available, so I have to be lucky and grab a side or so. On very rare occasions, especially when not doing leatherworking, when I'm doing some woodworking or that sort of thing, I take my time and design my project in Fusion 360. This helps me imagine it, see it in a three-dimensional picture, basically, because I am notoriously bad at trying to estimate designs and distances and that sort of thing. I'm horrible at it. So having a three-dimensional sketch of my project really helps a lot, especially when I was building the workbench, which I've done in a previous video. And basically first I designed it in 3D and then I went and actually built it. It also helped me get the exact measurements that I need so that I built the project with minimal waste of material and made sure that it fit in the right place. There isn't much else to say about my planning process. I usually just wing it for the most part. I just enjoy it better that way. Of course, there are frustrations associated with doing that basically and with not planning properly. But then again, I find that it's a lot more satisfying, in my opinion, if something goes right, and especially on the first time. There isn't much else to add to this, so thank you very much for joining me for the 15th day of May for Makers. I hope to see you tomorrow, and as always, stay safe and keep making.